Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you might be. My name is Sean, and I'm delighted you are joining us for today's ESPC community webinar. Today, I am joined by Zoe Wilson, MVP, who will cover Building Your Copilot Muscle, Practical Examples. We love hearing what you guys have to say, so remember to join in on the conversation about today's webinar and more on X. Our handle is at ESPC_community, and our hashtag is hashtag ESPC24. Tweet us, tag us, and tell us what you learned. Don't forget to check out our Learning Hub, which is updated with the latest blogs, ebooks, webinars, and how-to videos. You can access and view the Learning Hub by visiting our website, sharepointeurope.com, and clicking the Content tab at the top. Don't let the learning stop here. Continue to keep up and stay ahead by joining us for our next webinar. Developers, learn how to use SharePoint Framework to customize and extend SharePoint with Andrew Cannell, MVP. This webinar will take place this evening, Tuesday, the 14th of October, at 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. CEST. For more information on this webinar, please check out www.sharepointeurope.com/SharePoint Week. Late bird sale alert for hashtag ESPC24. As part of SharePoint Week, we're offering a €100 discount on top of the current sale price for ESPC24. Use code SharePoint Week to secure your spot. This offer is for new bookings only. Don't miss this chance to enhance your expertise in Microsoft 365, SharePoint, Azure, Power Platform, Copilot, and Microsoft Teams. Don't miss out. Register your interest today at www.sharepointeurope.com/pricing. We're excited to announce the call for speakers for EPPC 25 is officially open. This incredible event will take place in Vienna from June the 16th to 19th, 2025. We are looking for Power Platform experts to share their insights with a community of over 2,000 enthusiasts. If you're knowledgeable in Power BI, Copilot, Power Automate, Copilot Studio, Power Pages, or any other Power Platform tools, this is a fantastic opportunity to present and inspire others. Submit your sessions today at sessionize.com/European Power Platform Conference EPPC 1402. After this webinar, we'll have a questions and answers session. Type any questions you might have into the questions box. Questions will be selected and answered at the end of the presentation. This webinar will be recorded and added to the Resource Center, where you'll be notified by email when it is available. And now, I'm going to pass you over to today's webinar presenter, Zoe. Hello, Zoe. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, Sean, thank you. And thanks so much for having me with you today. Let me just share my screen.
Yeah, I can see your screen there.
Brilliant. Okay, so hi, everyone. I'm delighted to be with you this morning. And I'm here today to talk to you, as Sean said, about building your Copilot muscle with some practical examples. I am the co-host of a podcast, Copilot Connection. If you scan the QR code on the screen, you'll be able to find the link to the podcast and any other relevant information as well. So who am I? I'm Zoe Wilson. I'm one of the global modern work practice leads at Avanade, but for the last 15 months, I've actually been leading our global go-to-market for Copilot. I've been part of the team who is responsible for our internal deployment. I've been at the forefront of working with many of our enterprise clients, which means that some of the things that I'm going to share with you today are based on lived experience of helping clients and organizations understand how to get the most out of Copilot. I am a Microsoft MVP. I'm also a Microsoft Regional Director. You can find me on X, on LinkedIn. The links are at the bottom. And without further ado, let's get into what we'll cover today. So hopefully you all know what Copilot is, but we're going to start just with a little bit of an overview of the different Copilots and how they fit into the Copilot ecosystem. A little bit on pricing, licensing, where Copilot's embedded in a product versus where it needs a premium license. Then I'm going to talk about building your Copilot muscle and why adoption for Copilot is different to adopting a lot of other technology products, and how this is best approached. I'll share some tips for crafting good prompts for Copilot, which will help get to better outputs faster. And then I've got a live demo as well. So please join me in praying to the live demo gods, and let's make sure there are no Copilot issues when we get to that. And then lastly, we're going to bring all of this together with tips for how your organization and people can start to build their Copilot muscle to actually drive business value. But first of all, let's start with a bit of an overview of the Copilot ecosystem. We'll look at Copilot in, Copilot for, licensing and pricing. Now, on this slide, what I would say is we don't even have all of the Copilots on this, but this is something that Kevin McDonnell, my Copilot Connection co-host, and I pulled together just to try to show the complexity of the Copilot ecosystem. In the left-hand side, you can see we've got Copilots for all, which are broadly applicable. They can be used by lots of people, regardless of the particular function they work in or the type of role that they do. We've got Microsoft Copilot, or the artist formerly known as Bing, which is available in both consumer versions and enterprise versions as well, which comes with enterprise data protection. From a consumer perspective, Microsoft Copilot is free, but there is a pro version, and we'll come on to that in a moment. Then we've got Copilot in Windows, so Copilot embedded in the operating system, giving you that ability to use natural language to be able to interact with your different applications, to be able to interact with operating system settings and things like that. And I actually find this one to be really helpful for those who may have accessibility needs, because it's really easy for you to be able to find settings that are hidden in the ease of access center and configure things like visual settings or audio settings or subtitles using natural language, instead of having to know which of the millions of menus you need to go through to actually get to the thing you're looking for. Then we've got the most commonly known Copilot, Microsoft 365 Copilot, and the one that we'll spend a lot of time talking about today. So this is the premium enterprise Copilot, broadly applicable to pretty much every information worker or knowledge worker, not so much from a frontline worker perspective, primarily because of the licensing implications and the fact that a lot of them don't have enterprise licensing. For those of you who kind of follow the Copilot news as well, you will see that there's been a bit of a naming change following the Wave 2 announcements in September, where the name for Microsoft 365 Copilot has gone full circle. We started 18 months ago with Microsoft 365 Copilot. Then about a year ago, that pivoted to Microsoft Copilot for Microsoft 365. And now we're back to the much simpler Microsoft 365 Copilot. And then when we look at Copilots by role, you'll see that this naming change has actually been applied to the role-based Copilots as well. So for the last year, we've known Copilot for Service, Copilot for Sales as kind of standalone products. But as part of the Wave 2 announcements, these role-based Copilots have been grounded in that M365 experience. So now what we can see when we look at the specific role-based Copilots is Microsoft 365 Copilot for Service, Microsoft 365 Copilot for Sales or for Finance. And what we can probably expect is that as Microsoft continues to release more role-based Copilots, I'd very much expect this naming convention to continue. You'll also see we've got Copilot for Manufacturing here, which is an example of an industry Copilot. And this is an interesting one because prior to Wave 2, if you'd have looked at Copilot for Service and Copilot for Manufacturing, the names are very similar. You know, they're both premium products grounded in Copilot for a specific thing. But the naming change means that it's really clear which of the Copilots are actually grounded in that M365 capability with add-ons for the specific function, versus something like Copilot for Manufacturing, which is essentially composed of lots of the different Azure components rather than Microsoft 365. So hopefully from a naming perspective, this will start to make it a little bit easier. And what I'll expect we'll see is simpler market messaging and narrative from Microsoft as well, which will simplify all of this a little bit. We can also see we've got Copilot in Power Platform. So rather than Copilot for Service, which is a bundle that kind of brings together a few different components for a specific purpose, Copilot in Power Platform is more embedded inside the Power Platform products. And the same with Copilot in Viva as well, where rather than it being kind of an add-on on top of the Viva suite, Copilot in Viva is essentially generative AI capabilities that are embedded into those Viva products. And if we move on just to look at this from a licensing perspective, so I talked about Microsoft Copilot from a consumer perspective being free. There are lots of different places you can access this to. So the Bing app, the Copilot app specifically, you can access this in the browser. I've seen a huge amount of chatter recently about Copilot in WhatsApp, and essentially Copilot in WhatsApp is basically giving you another chat surface or another chat interface through which you can access the free consumer version of Microsoft Copilot. Now, just to be really clear, when we're talking about Copilot in WhatsApp, it's not a Copilot for WhatsApp that will help you catch up with the 200 messages in the group chat that you've missed in the in the couple of hours while you've been having a meeting. What that gives you is another chat surface through which you can interact with Copilot and ask it questions in the same way that you would in the browser or directly in the Copilot app. Then we've got Copilot Pro, which again is consumer. It's around $20 per month for a user, but it also requires a personal or family subscription for Microsoft 365 as well. And what this gives you is everything that you get in the free version of the consumer Copilot, but it also starts to give you some of those generative AI capabilities embedded in the Microsoft 365 apps as well. So things like Word, PowerPoint, that kind of thing. So for people who've got a family subscription or a home subscription who want to use some of those more advanced Office capabilities of Copilot, but don't have access to an enterprise license, then Copilot Pro can be a really good option. Microsoft also recently announced some new features that are coming to Copilot Pro, which is the Copilot Voice and Copilot Vision, which looks to be really promising in the way that you can actually start to interact with Copilot and use Copilot in a different way. I think there'll be limited capacity to use this in the free version of Microsoft Copilot, but again, if you want access to some of those more advanced and higher capacity from a Copilot Voice perspective, then Copilot Pro is the personal option to look at. Then we've got Microsoft 365 Copilot, which is the premium enterprise version. It's $30 per user per month, requires that enterprise or business licensing, and then that $30 is an add-on on top of that. From an enterprise perspective, we do also have that free option as well. So again, Microsoft Copilot, but this time with enterprise data protection, allowing people in an organization to be able to use that Copilot chat interface to ask questions, generate responses, but it doesn't come with that the Office apps and all of the additional features that the premium license will give you. Then when we look at the role-based Copilots, so the M365 Copilot for sales, for service, those are $50 per user per month. So $30 for M365 Copilot, and then $20 add-on for the ability to integrate with a CRM or with ServiceNow or something like that. And that can be bought either as a bundle together, or if a user already has the Copilot license, then the specific functional or role-based add-on can be bought for an additional $20. When it comes to Power Platform, I'm not getting into Power Platform licensing because that would pretty much take the rest of this session, but there are elements of Copilot in the Power Platform apps which are included for free. But as people start to use Copilot in Power Platform, there will be varied pricing for the ability to use specific connectors or for more capacity and that kind of thing. So that I think it's great that Copilot's there to help get started, but for some of the higher value enterprise use cases, I expect there'll definitely be premium Power Platform licensing to really get the most out of that. And then lastly, when we look at Copilot in Viva, Copilot in Viva is embedded across all of the Viva products, but to be able to unlock that, a full premium Viva Suite license is required. So there's no additional license needed for Copilot specifically in Viva, but you won't be able to use the capabilities unless you've got the full premium Viva Suite license. One of the things that Microsoft are doing, which I think is really great as well, is, you know, if you have an M365 Copilot license, what we're starting to see is the ability to interact with some of these other Copilots from within those M365 chat interfaces, which I think is really powerful. Now, we've gone through the Copilot ecosystem, so moving on to building your Copilot muscle, and this is what I like to call the human element of Copilot. I talk a lot about this human impact and the fact that when organizations talk about being AI first, what they really mean is, or what they really need to be doing is to be people first, because people are the critical element in the adoption and use of Copilot. And I think it's really important that we remember and recognize that using Copilot is a choice. I can give someone a license, but if they don't understand how to incorporate that into their workflow, they can choose not to use it, and it will just be a button that they can see in the different apps that they don't actually interact with. It's discretionary, and it's not one size fits all. And I think this is such an important point, because when I first started talking to organizations about Copilot in the first half of last year, there was this huge focus on use cases. You know, what is the killer use case for Copilot for people in finance or in HR? And the issue that I take with that is that people don't work in the same way. We all have different ways of working. And even if you have 5 people who all have the same job, the same tasks, the same responsibilities, the way that they will each get to the outcome is going to be different, because they each have different productivity habits. And for me personally, you know, I started using computers when I was kind of at the upper end of primary school. I used them through secondary school, through university, through all of my working life. And through that time, I've developed habits for how I manage my email, for how I run my meetings, for how I create, communicate, collaborate with people, and they will be different from the other people in my team. So there might be scenarios where we could say, you know, if you work in this team and you do this thing, Copilot will be helpful for you, but it might not apply to everybody. So we need to recognize that not all people are the same. And we've all got different ways of working, and we each need to find the unique value that Copilot will have for us. And there will be commonalities, you know, there will be kind of different ways that people find value that are common, but it's not one size fits all. And what I know this is the title of the session, but just to really make the point, you know, people really need to build and train their Copilot muscle. If you were training for a marathon, you wouldn't be able to go for a run once and be marathon ready. And with Copilot, it's an entirely new way of working. It's an entirely new way of completing our tasks, of producing outputs for our employer. And, you know, we need to kind of put the work in to understand how we can use it, and then continue to build and iterate on that and continue to find value. And, you know, this cannot be underestimated. People need to build and train their Copilot muscle. And we're going to go through some prompting tips now and a bit of a demo. And then I'm going to talk a little bit more about how organizations can start to help people build that Copilot muscle. So I think one thing that's really important to recognise is that when it comes to prompting, context really matters. When I was first working with some of my colleagues and we were giving people access to licenses in summer last year, I remember there was someone who asked Copilot in PowerPoint to create a project plan, and then they complained that it didn't actually give them anything useful. And the reason that it didn't give them anything useful was because there was no context in the prompt. There was no information about what the project was, what the milestones were, or the deliverables, or the expected outcomes, or anything like that. Literally, all they said was create a project plan. So it's really important that we give Copilot good instructions to be able to get good outcomes. And when we think about the ingredients that we need to write a good prompt for Copilot, we can start first of all with the goal. What's the response you're looking for? What is it that you need from Copilot? And then any context that's useful. Why do you need this? What is it you're trying to achieve? Pointing it to any source material that it can use to ground its response will give you a better outcome. So telling it what information it should use. And then any expectations that you have as well. So how should Copilot meet your needs in the best possible way? And if we just kind of break that down in an example, so the goal of this prompt is to generate 3 to 5 bullet points. Then when we look at the context, so why do you need it and who is involved? The context is to help prepare me for a meeting with a client to discuss their brand campaign. The source information, I'm asking it to look at email and Teams chats since June, because I know that that's when the most relevant information will sit inside my email and Teams. And then in terms of managing expectations, I want it to use simple language so that I can get up to speed quickly. So this is just an example of how to break a prompt down. I've got a few that we're going to show you as well, just to kind of demonstrate some of the power of prompting. And you'll see the link at the top of the slide. There's a ton of really great prompt samples that have been submitted here as well, which I'd highly recommend you go and look at if you're looking for guidance on how to get started with prompts. And with that, we are actually going to get into a bit of a live demo. So this is the bit where you all need to cross your fingers that Copilot is working. Now, the first thing that you can see here is this is the GitHub site that I was referencing on the previous slide. And you can see we've got tons of example prompts here. I'm not going to go through all of these, but I do really recommend that you go and look at this because it's a really powerful repository. Now, I'm going to start with my prompting in BizChat, in Copilot in the browser. And I've got quite a long prompt for it. So I'm just going to copy this in and then I'll kind of summarize for you. So I'm basically saying you're a communication and OCM specialist that works for the Copilot Connection, a podcast that was founded in 2023 and which aims to share information about the many different Copilot products being released across the Microsoft ecosystem. You're heavily involved in change initiatives. You write in a professional tone, can tailor your writing style for the audience. And then I've given it some additional instructions. So I'm basically saying what I want it to do is ask clarifying questions when you need additional information. Examples include asking about the audience or medium for content. Don't write any content that could be harmful, offensive, or inappropriate. And some additional instructions. And then I'm saying, using these instructions, please write a detailed plan outlining the approach to drive adoption and behavior change for Microsoft 365 Copilot. And you'll see that the first thing it's doing here, which is incredibly powerful, is actually asking for some additional context. So it's giving me questions of things that it would like to know so that it can give me more useful outputs. So who are the primary stakeholders or target audience? What are the key objectives? Are there any specific challenges or resistance you anticipate, and so on. And you can see at the bottom in the suggested prompts, it's actually suggesting some responses to some of these questions, which I'm going to use today just for ease of use. But actually what I've found to work really well is copying the questions and answering each of them with the additional input. So let's just send this, and you'll see that it's actually now starting to create this plan for me. Just let that finish. And then what makes this even more powerful is if I click edit in Pages, that then actually opens this up in Copilot Pages, which is leveraging loop components. So that's now opened this response, or the plan that it's drafted for me, in the loop component. I can edit this and make changes to any of that response that I want to. And I can also share this. So, you know, if you imagine you're collaborating on this with other people, I can start with the prompt and get that first draft output from BizChat, and then I can share that in a loop component or Copilot Pages with colleagues who can then also go in and make the changes that they want to do. So this is incredibly powerful for really supercharging that, you know, the first draft, and actually supercharging collaboration as well. Now, if I just reset the chat, I'm going to try another prompt, which I borrowed from Sarah Fenner, who is a professional trainer for, she's a Microsoft certified trainer covering a lot of the Microsoft products. And in this prompt, she's put that she works for a training company who provide interactive line-on-line business skills to help companies enhance productivity and efficiency. I'm a trainer and content creator with a focus on Microsoft 365. Please suggest 10 imaginative and time-saving ideas for Microsoft Copilot for Web and Microsoft 365 Copilot, creating a table showing a task, a sample of an excellent prompt for each task, app, and which Copilot it refers to. So let's just give this one, let's just give this a few seconds to run. And you can see, you know, these prompts are obviously not as detailed as the ones that I'm showing you, but you can see this is giving you some prompts to get started. It's giving you the task, it's giving you which app it relates to, which Copilot it relates to. And again, I can either copy this and share it, or I can edit in Pages and share that loop component with colleagues as well. Now, if I jump over to Whiteboard and click on Suggest, this is a prompt submitted to the GitHub Copilot Prompts repository by James Lopez. And what we're going to do is ask it to generate a comprehensive list of potential features, functionalities, and initiatives for a company intranet. Consider a wide range of user needs, from communication and collaboration to knowledge management and employee engagement. Focus on innovative ideas that can enhance productivity, streamline workflows, and foster a strong company culture. So if I hit that, you'll see it's you know, it's giving me a few things that it feels are relevant to intranets. I can ask it to generate more, just so that we've got a few more items on the whiteboard. Let me just insert these. So that's inserted 12 sticky notes for me. So again, you know, if you think about kind of starting the creative process, this can give you some ideas to get started. Now, I want you to imagine, just use your imagination for a second, that we've actually ran a full workshop, and instead of 12, we've got maybe 50 or 100 sticky notes on this board. One of the things that I then think is super powerful in Whiteboard is the ability to categorize the notes as well. So you can use it for that, you know, for that kind of initial bit of helping you get started with the creative process, but then also helping you actually categorize and make sense of everything that's come out of a workshop as well, which is super powerful. And I am now going to show you one of my new favorite prompts, which isn't, it's not a super long or detailed prompt, but this is something new that has landed in my tenant in Outlook, actually. So I'm going to ask Copilot in Outlook to set my out of office from Wednesday to Friday, as I'll be traveling to Aberdeen tomorrow for the Scottish Summit, and I'll reply to people on my return. And when I hit the send button, what you'll see is not, let's just let this reply. You'll see it's actually turned on my out of office for the dates that I specified in natural language, and it's added the note, the context from my prompt into the automatic reply as well, which is super powerful. And if I click managing settings and open up the full thing, you can see it's actually turned it fully on for me, put the note in. I think that's incredibly useful, and I'm looking forward to seeing more things like that land in the office products. Now, if we just go back into the deck, and I just want to run through the last section that I have for you, which is essentially driving business value. So how to start building your Copilot muscle within an organization. And I talked earlier about how when organizations think AI first, what they should actually be looking at is people first, because Copilot adoption isn't like adopting any other product. If I were to go to a client today to help them roll out and adopt Teams, it would be really easy to understand the end state that we're aiming for, because we know what good practice looks like for Microsoft Teams. We can say to people, this is how we want you to work and collaborate. This is what the end state looks like. But with Copilot, what we're trying to do is actually drive behavior change, and for people to be able to build that Copilot muscle and bring Copilot into the way that they work every day. So this is a multi-step journey where the first step is understanding how to use the product. Where does Copilot show up? How do I interact with it? How do I prompt with it? And then continuously drive those habits and that behavior change. And it's really important that we help people develop non-technical skills. So having a growth mindset and curiosity, being willing to go back and try something that maybe didn't work a month ago, because the pace of change, the pace at which new features are landing in the products at the moment is just incredible. So, things that don't work today could work in 2 weeks or a month or 3 months. So that growth mindset, that curiosity, giving people guidance on how to prompt is super important. Critical thinking and reasoning skills, because this is Copilot, not autopilot. And even if I'm using Copilot to help me do things, to help me do my job better, I'm still fundamentally responsible for any output that I produce with the help of Copilot. So I need to have the skills to be able to review the output and actually determine whether it's correct or not. Is it hallucinating? Has it pulled the right information from the source material? And making sure that I actually check and I'm responsible for what I'm sending out in my name. So we want people to build that Copilot muscle. And what that requires is a real focus from an organization on change enablement, on helping people build those consistent habits and driving that behavior change. And when we think about this behavior change, when we think about driving business value of Copilot, this isn't just a personal productivity story, but it starts with personal productivity, because I need to understand how I can use this as an individual to help my productivity habits. Again, like we said before, this isn't one size fits all. It's everybody works in different ways, everybody learns in different ways. So we need to ensure that that approach to learning, excuse me, supports all employees in developing the right skills. We need leadership buy-in. We need leaders to lead by example. We need employees in an organization to understand why we're using Copilot, and that Copilot is positioned correctly as a tool to augment rather than replace. And when I look at the organizations who've been really successful with Copilot, there are some commonalities. There are things that they have in common. So from a foundations perspective, the organizations who move most quickly with Copilot and who are really having success in driving that behavior change are those who have a strong digital core. They've got good use of M365, they've got data governance in place, they've got, from a security and compliance perspective, they've been able to move quickly because they've done a lot of that heavy lifting. They might have the Power Platform Center of Excellence or enablement in place already, so that there's an understanding of things like the guardrails between pro code and low code. And I'd say it's really important to know that if you're in an organization that maybe doesn't have all of these things sorted out, it's not a blocker to success, but these are things that will need to be sorted out alongside that process of understanding the role that Copilot plays in an organization. When we look at people, recognizing the need to change mindset and habits and behaviors and fostering this sense of growth mindset in an organization, having a change enablement strategy and recognizing that when it comes to change enablement, this is not just one and done. This isn't about giving people a one-time training session and then saying, hey, off you go, you can use Copilot now, because behavior change is really hard. So there needs to be that continuous focus on learning and upskilling and sharing, and champions who pull their colleagues on this journey with them, and having that innovation culture, understanding what innovation means in an organization, and people being willing to try things and experiment is super important. And then when we look at strategy, again, lots of the organizations who've been able to move fast with Copilot, it's because they've either had a defined strategy for generative AI, or they've at least understood their objectives for Copilot. What is it they're trying to achieve with it? What does Copilot value look like to them? Are they wanting to, are they wanting to increase the top line and make it easier to sell faster or do more? Are they wanting to reduce costs and optimize the bottom line by getting rid of efficiencies? Is value to them, employee value prop, is it making the organization a more attractive place for people to work and making sure that they can retain top talent? So understanding at least why you're using Copilot as an organization, I think, is super helpful, because then you can make sure that you're achieving the objectives that you're trying to. That leadership buy-in that I talked about, leadership's role modeling behavior with Copilot, leadership being able to correctly articulate, again, the role that Copilot will play. And then having business sponsorship, because ultimately Copilot will drive business value. If we help people build and flex their Copilot muscle, it will drive business value. And it is a premium product, which means that in many cases, IT might not have the budget for this. And one of the things that I've seen quite a lot where this is an IT-led project is almost a reluctance to put this in the hands of people. But where this is kind of owned and sponsored by a business leader who understands the potential, that can really contribute to the success of Copilot. And when we think about that roadmap to business value, if you're an organization who's kind of just looking to get started with this, I'd recommend starting with a small technical pilot. And I say small, this should be small, it should be fast. This is an opportunity to identify and remediate any technical blockers. But what you really want to do is to get Copilot into the hands of real business users in a business pilot as quickly as possible, because these are the people who will find new and interesting ways to use Copilot to do their jobs better, more effectively, more creatively. And that's where the real value will start to come from. Again, understanding the objectives for Copilot and the role that you think Copilot might play in an organization is helpful, because that allows you to actually measure the value that matters to you through the business pilot. And that will help you to identify who the priority business groups and users might be, where you think you can unlock the most value the most quickly. And then that plan to deploy Copilot at scale. And this is super important, that it's underpinned by that robust change enablement strategy, that is focused on helping people build that Copilot muscle. And then as we start to look beyond Microsoft 365 Copilot, we can start to look into the role-based Copilots, into agents and extensibility. And I think it's really important to say that if you've already started deploying Copilot, it's still not too late to start to put in place that change enablement strategy if you're not doing that already. Because even if people have a license, they might be underutilizing that, they might not be using it properly. So wherever you are on this journey, it's still possible to put in place the measures that will help people use this the most effectively and really drive that business value. And when we think about business value and moving beyond the foundations of Microsoft 365 Copilot, I think, for me, I see Microsoft 365 Copilot as a way to redefine that personal productivity. And for organizations who want to be Gen AI powered, which feels like pretty much every organization at the moment, Copilot inside products like Microsoft 365 feels like one of the fastest and most effective ways to get Gen AI into the hands of employees. And again, if we think about this from the perspective of behavior change, this is not, it's not an overnight journey. This is we're on a path of a few years of complete transformation in the way that work gets done. So this will be a big shift. And by giving people access to Copilot inside the apps and the products that they use every day, by helping them build that Copilot muscle, by helping them develop prompting habits and understand how they can start to use this technology in new and interesting ways, what we'll also start to do is to identify the opportunities to go beyond what the out-of-the-box Copilots can give. And part of that might be a journey through the role-based Copilots into Copilots for service or sales or into any function or industry of choice, which will drive business value for specific personas, specific people who do certain types of work. Then we've got the ability to extend Copilot with agents, with plugins, with connectors, allowing Copilot to be able to reason over data in other systems, by allowing it to interact with and take action on data in other systems, and really bringing all of that into the Copilot experience layer surfaced in Microsoft 365. And then for things that are more custom or high value, highly bespoke, require custom RAG or custom models or fine tuning or anything like that, we can start to get to custom Copilots. And again, these can extend into core out-of-the-box Copilots with that M365 experience layer for Copilot. But really understanding the role that each of these play and how they work together and which to use when is a really important part of understanding how to drive business value. And again, helping people use it in Microsoft 365 Copilot feels to me like a really important first step on this journey. Now, that's all of the content that I've got for you. So I believe we will open the floor for questions. I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who's listened and stayed with us so far. Please do go follow the Copilot Connection, a podcast that I run with Kevin McDonald, and we talk about all of the different Copilots. So give that a follow. But Sean, do we have any questions?
Yeah, thanks Zoe for a great presentation. So now we'll get into the questions and answers part. If you wish to ask a question, please feel free to type in the questions box now. So our first question is, what are the most common challenges you have seen with your clients in rolling out Microsoft 365 Copilot?
I think that's a very good question with quite a mixed answer. So some of it depends on what industry they're in. And a common issue that we've seen with some of the more highly regulated industries has definitely been around that security and compliance. So one of the things that we've had to do is kind of help them understand, what guardrails they can put in place to allow them to pilot safely, what remediation work they might need to put in place to make sure that they're confident with a broader scale rollout. Some of the other challenges has been around sponsorship or who owns the project. And like I mentioned, if not always, but one of the things we've seen where this might be an IT-led project is it never moves out of the technical pilot. And what happens is you might end up with like 5, 10, or even 20 licenses that are all assigned to people in IT. And basically what they do is they try to break Copilot and prove all the ways it doesn't work and the things that they are not comfortable with. Whereas if you get it into the hands, if it's owned and sponsored by someone from the business side, typically they focus more on the business value. And it's that change enablement strategy that should be used to help people understand the limitations and how to work in it. So that's really been an interesting thing that we've had to work through.
Perfect. So the next question there is Copilot agents in SharePoint. Will these be scoped at pages as well as Office files?
I don't actually know the answer to that one. I think currently it's just documents, but my expectation is that will include SharePoint pages as well.
Perfect. So the next one there is how are organizations measuring ROI?
So that's another really good question. The ROI one is one that has come up many times, I'd say, over the last 18 months. And the problem is it's a really difficult one to answer. Partly because I think we don't understand either the full cost or the full potential of it yet, because it is a product that's fairly new. It's still maturing. And the way that we've approached this, rather than focusing on ROI, has been to understand business value. And this is why it's super important to understand what business value looks like to an organization, because it's easier then to be able to measure through a business pilot or even through a broader rollout whether the benefit from Copilot is hitting those value drivers. So, things like employee value proposition. How do people feel about it? Do they feel like they can work more effectively and creatively? Are they happier? Are they more likely to stay? This is one thing I take quite a lot of issue with. When a lot of people look at ROI for Copilot, what they tend to do is to look at minutes saved. So imagine I save an hour a day with Copilot. Then they take my cost to the organization and they basically say, okay, Zoe has freed up 5 hours a week. So that means from an ROI perspective, we can take 5 hours worth of cost per week for Zoe. And this is what the ROI looks like. But that's not actually a true calculation, because it's not actually how much time I'm freeing up that's important. It's what I'm doing with it. And that's the bit that's really hard to capture, because everybody who frees up time might be doing something different with it. And again, this is why it's really important that we focus on change enablement, because what we want is for people to free up time and then invest that in high value activities. We want people to save time on sales admin so they get to spend more time with actual clients or with new clients. And that's part of what makes the ROI conversation quite tricky. But I think understanding what value looks like to you and your organization at least gives you something that you can measure.
Perfect. So just next question there is, I have to present to management about Copilot. Can I demonstrate without premium license?
So you can demonstrate some of the capabilities of Copilot using the Microsoft Copilot free interface, which will give you essentially like the Bing Chat Copilot experience. You won't be able to demo Copilot inside the Office products, or embedded in Teams with that biz chat experience. So some of what you might need to demo, I think, will be limited. But in terms of the concepts, if you think about how you craft the Microsoft Copilot demo in the browser, you might be able to actually show the art of the possible, even if you can't do that inside the premium Office apps.
Perfect. So just next question there is there a row of standard questions we can use to start providing business users with Copilot driver license? Some questions that is always great to ask before you provide a user with a Microsoft 365 Copilot license.
So that's another good question. It's not something I've generally thought about before. I mean, you might want to look at, so rather than questions that you might give a user, what you might want to do is almost look at the characteristics of a user who you think might be a good fit for a license. So, is there a part of the business that has, it's almost like personas. Is there a part of the business, that has like tons of meetings and lots of documents and admin to do because they'd be a good fit, versus someone who maybe only spends an hour at their desk and the rest of the time they're out in the field and driving around and maybe not doing as much office work. Because if you're testing Copilot and you're wanting to find people who are going to get the value out of it, it's those who are most heavily embedded in the Microsoft 365 suite that will find the most value the quickest.
Perfect. So the next question there is, how important is it to use a proper data governance and purview?
It's incredibly important, and actually, one of the things I've seen a lot of focus on over the last year is around the security aspects of Copilot. So how do we secure the content that's in the tenant and make sure that it's protected and managed? But when you think about data governance, it's not just about security. It's not just about making sure that the data you've got is secure and compliant with policies. It's equally important to look at governance as well. So do you have the right stuff in the tenant? Have you got files and content that's sitting in a file share or DMS or something like that that would be really helpful if Copilot could reason over it, because you might need to move that into the tenant. There might be stale content that you want to archive and remove so that Copilot isn't reasoning over that anymore and is giving you high value responses. You might want to think about things like, news posts or pages. Do you put lifecycle management in place that will expire content once it becomes stale, so that it's not actually still contributing to Copilot responses when it's no longer relevant? So I think data governance with Purview is important, but equally thinking about that whole content management piece as well, to make sure that the stuff that you've got in your tenant that Copilot can access will give you the best responses for people.
Amazing. So just the next question there is, do you see a big uptake in companies using SharePoint Premium as part of prep for Copilot?
Yes, I do. I think I'd say it feels like it's been a little bit of a slow burn, because it feels like for the past few months the focus has been on understanding Copilot value, what Copilot means to an organization. But what I definitely see now is more focus on making sure that content management piece is in place. And I think SharePoint Premium, SharePoint Advanced Management has a really powerful role to play in that. So I'm definitely seeing an increase.
Perfect. So just the next question there is, Microsoft 365 Copilot will expose everything to everyone, question mark?
No, it will not. So Copilot will only, so as a user, if you get a Copilot license, it will only surface responses or leverage content that you specifically have permissions to. So if those permissions are wrong in your tenant and you have access to stuff that you're not meant to, that can be problematic. But it will only use, for you as an individual, it will only use the things that you directly have access to.
Perfect. So just the next question there is, what kind of feedback would you suggest to collect from Business Copilot? And what sort of success criteria would you suggest to measure?
So again, this is highly dependent on an organisation and the things that matter to them. So when I look, if I use my organisation as an example, when we started rolling out Copilot in summer last year, we were very intentional in how we did this, and we put in place a research programme. Because at that point there wasn't a huge amount known about the reality of Microsoft 365 Copilot. You know, it was a lot of marketing content, but it had not really been in the hands of many real people for us to really get a sense of what it meant to our business. So we put in place a research program that measured across lots of different domains. We were looking at things like, employee satisfaction, trust, communication, the way that teams work together, general different kind of factors of employee sentiment. We looked at time saving, we looked at content accuracy, we looked at organizational citizenship behaviors, which is a really interesting measure, and shows an individual's willingness to contribute above and beyond their day job or their 9 to 5. And actually one of the things that we were interested in was, will Copilot essentially free up headspace or capacity for people to be able to get more involved in some of those organizational initiatives? So we looked across a really broad set of domains, and what that meant was that we found all of the different ways that Copilot was providing value. And we've used this with a lot of clients as well, but for some clients, if there's a particular area of focus for them, like that employee value prop or efficiency or something like that, we really drill into those specific things. But it's super important to actually understand what Copilot means to you, and what are the metrics that matter to you, because you can't measure everything. It's just not possible.
Perfect. Just next question there is, do you think there is too much focus on governance and clearing out old documents in SharePoint before rolling out Copilot and potentially delaying the rollout? Is there a good way of prompting to identify if the information is potentially old or out of date?
So I wouldn't say there was too much focus, and I equally wouldn't say it needs to delay the rollout. So the way that we approached this with organisations who just wanted to get started was we helped them put in place what we called governance guardrails. So, do you just start with a set of pilot users? Do you get them using it? And at the same time, then you do kind of audit and assessment work to understand how big an issue you might have. I wouldn't necessarily trust prompting to tell me whether content is relevant or not in this scenario. But I don't think too much focus is given to it. I think it's really important that you can still start the Copilot journey without necessarily doing all that heavy lifting, as long as you have a plan in place to help.
Perfect. So just the next question there is, we are testing Microsoft 365 Copilot at the moment. Copilot is good in some of the stuff we do, but mostly it is not much for a help. Example, creating a presentation based on company template, making reports based on multiple big Excel files. How you see this?
So I think it's a really good point. I'd definitely say that there are different levels of maturity across the different products. What I would expect, particularly with some of the Wave 2 announcements from Microsoft and things like PowerPoint Builder, the narrative builder in Microsoft PowerPoint, I expect we will see improvements with this, because Microsoft have been getting a lot of feedback from people that it's not where it needs to be. And this was the point that I made about being willing to go back and try things, because I know that things are continuously evolving and improving. I feel like PowerPoint is getting to a place where it's actually starting to be much more useful than it was, say, this time last year. But there are definitely things it does better, and just kind of understanding where those are and how to leverage them, I think is helpful.
Perfect. Just the next question there is, if I give prompt like what happened in someone meeting, will I provide the results? Maybe it was private meeting.
So for Copilot to give you results in a meeting, you need to have transcription running. So if I'm in a meeting with other people and I've got the transcript running, I can ask Copilot questions during a meeting, which it will tell me and those will be private. So no one else can see the question I'm asking Copilot or the response it's giving me. But it's basically grounding that response in the transcripts and in the chat messages as well that happen during the meeting. And then, if that transcript is saved at the end of the meeting, then I can come back after the meeting, and again, I can ask questions and interact with the transcript using natural language. And again, no one else can see that. But you do need to have at least one other person in the meeting, and you do need to have transcript running either during the meeting or transcript settings to save the meeting at the end of the meeting in order for Copilot to work.
Perfect. So I think we just have 2 more questions left after, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So what options do we have to address oversharing?
So I'm not sure we could do that in 2 minutes. That's a whole other topic. But I think kind of a basic starting point would be to make sure that you've got some, even if you don't have all of the purview labels or settings defined, at least just have some basic DLP and some basic labels in place that will help you protect and manage content. There are tons of settings that Microsoft have provided that help, where you can exclude sensitive sites or sensitive content from even being indexed by Copilot or accessible to Copilot. But really, I think, to get started, think about what basic protection you might need. But there's definitely some work done to think about what that overall knowledge management strategy is, what content you have, how you manage the life cycle of it, and what protection you need to make sure that Copilot's only accessing the right information for an individual.
Perfect. So just the last question there, because we're running out of time. I have access to confidential documents with sensitivity labels named confidential, and ask Copilot to draft a new document. Will it show me if it uses parts of the confidential document? And can we P or label prevent Copilot from drawing from that source?
Yeah, so there are controls that you can use to prevent certain sensitive content even being accessed by Copilot. If you use a source document that has a sensitivity label applied to it, and you use that to generate new content, the new content will automatically inherit that same level of protection. So it won't tell you, if it gives you like a 10-page document, it won't say page 2 is the page that's got the sensitive information from this other document. But what it will do is at least ensure that new content that's created inherits that same sensitivity label and that same level of protection, which I feel like, is a good starting point. But understanding what content you might want to exclude from Copilot altogether, I think, is an important part of that overall knowledge management strategy.
Perfect. So I think that's all we have time for. So on behalf of the ESBC community, we'd like to extend a big thank you to you again, Zoe, for taking time out today to carry this webinar. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. And if anybody has any questions that weren't answered, do feel free to reach out to me.
Perfect. Thank you, Zoe, for that. So that's the end of today's webinar. You can find this webinar and more at sharepointeurope.com/resource center. Thanks again for y'all for joining us today, and I hope you join us again soon. Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.